Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to our final session of today. And I want to introduce Karmen Trzupek. She's the Senior Director of Scientific Programs for Rare X. And she has been instrumental along with helping the Rare X team and helping us with our data collection program. And along with Karmen, I want to introduce Deb Murphy. She's the Director of Research and Studies.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction, Loretta.
Yeah,
Over the years, I've learned that there is a lack of data that has been collected on us patients. And where do we go to find that information? And what do we do? How do we get to it? Surgical versus non-surgical, all these different areas that we need to do. How many different forms of hypopara are there? And then what, are they the same or are they different? How do we all fit together? There needs to be a central place where we can keep all our data and we can be able to have researchers use it at I put it like at a one-stop shop. But how do we keep our data safe? And how do we keep our data from being put in a silo? There's been all kinds of information shared today, all kinds of studies shared, but all that information is unfortunately kind of locked up right now with the different pharmas. But we need a place where we can take care of it for ourselves. As we are hearing studies and more studies, guess what? We have found the place. And that is within Rare X. Within Rare X, we're going to be able to be in charge of our own data. We're going to be able to see what each part of our details are. So without further ado, I'd like to share the screen also with Karmen. And Karmen's going to share a little bit more of the technical areas as far as what Rare X can do for us.
thank you so much, Deb. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here. It's nice to share this time with you and be invited. As Deb mentioned, I work for Rare X. Rare X is a nonprofit organization that really was born out of patient advocacy and the need to gather data in a highly structured way that makes it useful for research, but then immediately turn that around and make it available on an open science platform to accelerate the use of that data to researchers. So I do have some slides. I'm going to share that with you to give you a little bit of an overview and then also to kind of walk you through some of the data collection portal and what some of the questions are that we're asking for, why we ask them, and kind of what the purpose is. And I hope that will address some of the questions that I know Deb has shared with me that have come from different people, but we'll also have plenty of time if there are questions that come in to address those. So let me share. And switch it there. There we go. Okay, so first I'm just going to tell you very briefly a little bit about what Rare X really provides and why we think this is so necessary in the rare disease space. So essentially, Rare X has two different platforms, and I think this is really, really important in kind of framing your participation both as an individual patient or family, and then as a larger community. So the first platform is where we collect patient data. So most of that data is patient reported. So patient reported diagnoses, patient reported symptoms, symptom history, medication history, all of that. But also patient, what I would call patient provided data. So like genetic testing data in the population within your community that has had that done. And then the second platform that we have is really a data sharing platform. It is an open science platform to facilitate getting this data out there and getting it used. Because what we know, so I've been working in clinical genetics for 21 years, entirely in rare diseases. And what Deb said is so true. Like what has happened for so many rare disease communities is that really useful data gets collected and then it gets housed in an academic medical center or in a pharma company's clinical trial, in some place where it is tightly held and not let go. So everything about this model says we're just going to get it out there for open access science. And then throughout, we have patient management support to ensure that we're helping you to succeed in meeting your goals. I'm going to share this, not that we have to go into great detail, but because I think it's important to be really transparent about where RareX is in our development. So the RareX platform has only been live for just over 1 year. That means that we don't have anywhere near like the full capabilities of what we intend to have on this platform today. We are continuing to build and grow this platform. What we have today is the general core, or what we often call the head to toe survey. So anybody who's come on board has answered some questions very high level, like, do you have any difficulty with your vision? Like seriously, that high level, right? And then if you say yes, you start to get deeper. And then if you say like, yes, and I have a retinal problem, you go deeper into what retinal problems are. So those are very much like skip logic. You only answer based on what you've answered before. That's built in, including kind of the next, level surveys that come after whenever you answer those initial questions. The supplemental kind of data surveys that many of you are wondering, like, where are the HPA very specific surveys? Where are those? Those are not on the platform yet because we haven't developed those essentially for any of the rare disease communities on board yet, because we're still working on getting like the core of what supports everybody across the board. So we will continue to work with your community on understanding what are the needs, what are the interests. We'll continue working with, we hope to work with biopharma companies who are really interested in development in your disease space and see if there are things that would accelerate their therapeutic development that we could ask that we might be able to get on sooner. So that's in our roadmap. So if you're thinking some of that is glaringly missing, we know we can't address it all at one time, but we're moving toward it. Okay, I'm going to show you some snapshots of the data collection platform, and I think this will answer some of the questions that have come up so far. So here's the landing page over here on the left. This is the landing page with lots of beautiful pictures from your community. And if you click on the Get Started, it'll take you right into our portal, and you will notice that you can check all that apply. So if you are a patient entering data for yourself, you would click that first one. If you are a parent of a child, you would click that you're a caregiver. But if you have one of the rare genetic forms and you're both affected, then you could have multiple roles. So the platform is definitely built for that, to enable multiple roles in a single individual. You will need to answer a data preferences survey. This is really important to us at RareX, because we were born out of patient advocacy. What many of us have seen and experienced is that patients historically have had the smallest voice in how their data is used, and we're flipping that around. So you have a right to choose how your data is used. Currently, most of the patients and participants on our platform choose for their data to be used broadly for any kind of research, but not all. Some would like it only to be used for health and biomedical research. So they might say like, no, I don't want this to be used in like the development. I mean, they wouldn't say this specifically, but if they knew the example, this would fall into it. Like, no, I don't want it to be used for developing like diagnostic algorithms for some other disease using my data as a control. No, I just want it for like this type of biomedical research. So there's more than just these two choices that you can make when you go in there. But that determines how researchers gain access to the data. Okay, I know this question came up, so I wanted to make sure to address it. When you go in and fill out the general information, it's going to ask a number of questions. I think we're all very used to filling out questions based on race and ethnicity by now, but we don't necessarily often get this question about estimated household income. And so I just wanted to say why we ask it, and also about health insurance. Like, we're never going to bill your health insurance for anything. So why do we ask about health insurance? These two questions are really around health economics and health equity research. So helping us to understand where are their needs, where are their discrepancies in access. You know, if we find in a particular community that everyone under a certain household income level has very poor access to medications, that's something really important for your community to know and to go out and try to address. And we would be happy to set you up with resources to help you to address that. But you can always say, I prefer not to answer if you don't want it used for that. Okay, so kind of the meat of what's in here is really these surveys. The surveys that are on the RareX platform are highly structured. So our goal is that every single thing that you take your precious time to fill out on our platform is research grade data. So sometimes things might be asked in kind of a weird way, or you have specific drop downs and they don't seem quite right to you, but it's because it all aligns with current healthcare codes, so that we can make sure that this data is all really efficiently available and useful for research. There are places where if like none of that works for you, you can free text. Keep in mind that free text answers don't migrate over to the research platform, but instead come to us for curation. So we might see like, oh, someone wrote in here, these choices don't make sense to me. Here's the symptom that I have or that my daughter has. We would see that, we would communicate back with you and help you figure out the right place to put that. When people free text, they put PHI, personal health information, all over the place. So we will never put that information on the research platform because the research platform is all de-identified. It's very important. I think Deb's writing away. She must have some questions. Yeah. You're going to ask me at the end? Because it doesn't matter to me. You can ask me now or at the end. At the end. Okay. All right. Level 2 surveys. In fact, I'm going to go back for a second. So once you answer this diagnosis survey, and you might say something like, yeah, my daughter has some hearing loss. When you say that, it will automatically pop in a level 2 survey for you. So you can see here, this says surveys and studies level 2. So anything that you said yes to in that first diagnosis survey, it's going to pop you an additional follow-up survey about that. Now in this community, many people experience like brain fog and kind of these episodes, right? And of this. And so you might say like, I'm struggling with something related to like thinking or cognition or something. And then it would pop you a secondary kind of level 2 survey based on you saying that. So these level 2 surveys are really important. And I think it's also important when you reflect on, you know, I told you before, we don't have HPA specific surveys, but a lot of the problems that affect this disease community, we actually do have surveys for, because they're in these level 2 and they're embedded within that. And that's actually really, really important to our overall approach, because our overall approach says we're not going to go to the medical literature and read about everything that has been described in HPA and then ask you those specific questions only, because this has happened a lot in medical research over time. And what happens is it just perpetuates what we already knew. Like if you only ask the questions based on what you already knew, you only get answers based on what you ask. And so we don't want to do that. We want to take an agnostic approach to diseases and just say, you tell me everything you're experiencing, and then let's let the data and the researchers tell us what's statistically significant and what's really a part of this and what's not. That's a better way to do research. So a lot of what your community experiences, what your family may experience really should be fully addressed within some of these level 2 surveys. Okay. I want to mention, for anyone who has had genetic testing, regardless of the outcome of that genetic testing, anyone who has had genetic testing should upload their genetic test report. The snapshot at the top is kind of where you would see that, where you would upload that. That's all you do. You just upload a report and you're done. On our end, our curators will log in, they'll see that report, and they will curate that into discrete data elements that are useful for research. All right, so this is super critical. Like I said, even if that testing was negative. Okay, and here's the whole point. The whole point of doing all of this is that it gets made available to researchers. So this is very exciting to us at RareX that all of our data went live on our data analytics platform a little less than a month ago on September 30th, I think. Yep, on September 30th. So it all went live. So right now, if you have researchers in your community who are really interested in seeing the data that has been submitted so far, they can submit a data access request form. You'll see at the very top of this page that if they go to rare-x.terra.bio, they will come to this page, and the very first hyperlink there will take them to that request form. They have to fill that out and say what kind of research they intend to do, whether or not that's IRB approved, what kind of access they're looking for, and then our data access review committee will review that, give them access based on kind of patient permissions and how that aligns with the research they're looking to do. And then they'll get started. That analytics platform is available on a program called Terra, or a platform rather called Terra, that is hosted by the Broad Institute. So this is an extremely stable, powerful environment through the Broad Institute. And it's worth noting that because it is so powerful, it's not something that most of you or even I are going to go in and find to be extremely user-friendly. And so because it is meant for like deep data analytics and statistical analyses. But if there are clinicians who are listening to this or who you're talking to who are really interested in very specific questions within this data set, but they don't do cloud-based computing and they're not going to start doing cloud-based computing to learn it, they can still submit a data access request with a specific question and we'll do it for them. Okay, that's all I prepared, and I'm super happy to take questions. I think Deb's got a bunch of them. Deb, you're on mute.
Does it help if I unmute myself?
Yeah.
All right. I have a question here. Is there any way for us patients to see the data from our community, or is it only for researchers?
Well, that's a very good question. So there's kind of 3 levels of answers to this. Okay. Level number 1 is that the patient advocacy group leaders for every organization that comes on board the RareX platform has access to a dashboard. That dashboard gives them information like how many individuals have registered within your community on the platform. Of those, how do they break down by age? How do they break down by geography? Things like that. The capabilities of that dashboard will grow over time. We're continuing to build that out. But they will have access to that and they can share that with you as a community. So that's kind of way number 1. Way number 2 is that there probably are some people within your community who kind of fall under what we call citizen scientists, who are like, you know what, I have a data science background and I would really love to dive into this data in a kind of deep dive way. They can submit a data access request form. If they've never done any kind of biomedical research before, they'll have to undergo some training in order to gain access to that data set, but they can do it. And we will provide them the resources to kind of figure out next steps in doing that. And then there's kind of a middle ground. And the middle ground is like what we just hope and plan to do with you kind of along the way. And that is that, you know, like next year when your conference is coming up, then maybe a month in advance, we want to talk together. You know, Deb and I will probably talk and figure out like what kinds of data would be really useful to pull out of what's been done so far. And let's do some like bespoke data pulls for you. And let's put that together in ways that you can really share with the community. And then related to that, if there's a researcher who's doing research on the data that your community is generating, we get a commitment from them that any significant insights that come out of that, certainly any publications, even if it's just like a white paper or a blog, all of that gets shared back with us to share with you.
That would be awesome. I have another question. What if you've had genetic testing for a different disease? Would you like that information too?
I'm going to say yes.
Okay. I had a question. Say we've already logged in, we've gotten our basic modules done. What if there are new modules that are added? Will we be notified, or do we just have to keep checking back?
You will totally be notified. In fact, we launch new ones every month, and I have a user account in our demo environment and I get them. So I get these emails a couple of times a month, like, hey, this new survey was added and you can go and complete it now.
Well,
I stack my emails. So for some people, if it's too much, you can choose in your email settings to stack them so it all comes in one email. That's an email setting on your part. So that's what I do.
well, and the other thing I love about it is the fact that if it's too much for you to take on all at once, you can do some modules and then take a break and then come back and finish some more.
And it will save wherever you're at, even if it's part way. And when you come back in, it'll say like, here are the ones that are unfinished.
Correct. Well, the one thing I wanted to especially point out is for you that are genetics, please take the time to fill out and be a part of this, because us surgicals, there's a lot of us, but we need to understand and we need to be able to see what happens when the genetics and the autoimmunes and all the other ones. I really want to see some data come out. And that even includes pseudo and pseudos hypopara. I want to see you guys all have your own little sessions.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, Deb, I don't think you and I have talked about this, but next year we're going to begin working with a different group in developing some very specific surveys on autoimmune disorders broadly. And and so when that happens, you know, again, anyone who has answered yes to any of those initial questions will be notified that there are additional surveys available.
That is great. This is our way of getting our voice out, because it's been silent for way too long. That's about all I have. Karmen, I want to thank you so much. There's one more thing I wanted to say, and that is, we can't help you if you don't help us, because it's you taking the time and putting your effort in. That's what's going to make a difference when it comes to those researchers being able to find data for us.
Yeah, and I would add one thing to that, which is that When drug developers, so small biotech companies, big pharma companies, doesn't matter. When drug developers are evaluating whether or not to work on a particular drug candidate in their clinical development pipeline, one of the things that they look for is how engaged and committed is the patient population. Because if it's not that committed and engaged, it might be really difficult for us to fill a clinical trial. And in the United States today, the number one reason for clinical trial failure is inability, in rare disease, is inability to enroll. It is not a problem with the drug. It's a huge problem, right? So in rare disease, we have got to solve that. And so a lot of drug developers, if they believe that the patient community isn't well organized, committed, kind of showing up ready to participate, they shy away because there have been so many failed clinical trials due to this. So like the more people we have within any given community, the more those drug developers stand up and say, like, this is a community we should be working with.
Well, those are great thoughts to end with. Anything else, Carmen?
I think that's it out of me.
Okay, well, Loretta, it's up to you now.
Well, I want to thank you for this session on Rare X. I actually have a better understanding now of what this program was developed for. So thank you for sharing that information with us. I want to thank you all for spending the day with us on day one of our HypoPARAthyroid conference. I hope you can come back tomorrow at 10:15. We'll begin with the question and answer session, followed by 10:30 on fractures and cataracts. And as an added value to our session, Dr. Kohlmeyer is going to be joining us for our question and answer session tomorrow. So I hope to see you promptly at 10:15 tomorrow morning. Thank you, and thank you for joining us again. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.